It is time for Glen Suitor here on the all-new Sports Cage. We're getting close to Christmas. It's always probably nice for a player, Glenn, to sign right before Christmas. It's like getting a job right before Christmas. I think a lot of us knew that Noah Zur, offensive lineman for the Riders, was going to re-up the Langenberg, Saskatchewan product. But just another domino, right, to fall here for Rider Nation.
Well, a couple things. Yeah, first of all, I think it's great that the coaching staff is putting a priority on the offensive and defensive lines. I think in going into free agency, I hope they do the same. I think that's where I'd start, making sure you, first of all, re-sign the guys you want, and that's where Noah comes in. But there's other aspects to this signing that are big. One is, he's a local kid, as you mentioned, but U of S, was his college. So you're talking about a guy who, the fans love. So, build your O-line, build your D-line, and then put in the pieces around those two groups. I'm still amazed when we get to free agency or even leading up to it where you're re-signing your own players, where coaches are throwing a lot of money at a receiver. Now, I don't want to not, poo-poo on a receiver getting paid well. I don't want them to think that I'm trying to undermine their efforts to get as much money as they can. But if you're building a team, boy, those receivers rely on the quarterback, and the quarterback relies on his O-line. Those things have to be great before the receiver even sees the ball. So I always sort of raise an eyebrow when I see, like 2 years ago, the Kenny Lawler deal for, what was it, $250 or something. And I go, okay, but Kenny Lawler is relying on two aspects of the game that he's are out of his control. So Noah Zur, excellent to get things started as far as re-signing their own players.
Absolutely. The CFLPA report card came out. To be honest, I have no idea what this is. Walk us through this. How did the Riders do?
Okay, so there is, and I'm just getting it recently here too. So I'm going to go off this, my phone here. I'm going to have my cheat sheet here. But basically, there's letter grades for a few categories: football operations, management administration, training and medical staff, equipment, family treatment, nutrition and diet, team travel, and training camp. Those are the categories. And teams, the players will vote on their teams, and it's completely, there's no names attached to any of it, of course. But, we talked about this and how much it really matters. I think sometimes, especially when you have a bad season on the scoreboard, you're going to have disgruntled players, and those disgruntled players are going to, when it's anonymous and they can't, be named, that they will go after teams. But having said that, I think Rider fans can be very proud. I think the three most important ones, Barney, are football operations, obviously. Your training and medical should be as good. You got to feel as a player that you're safe and taken care of if you get nicked or hurt. And family treatment. I think those are really important in today's world. And Saskatchewan got an A in football ops, an A in management and administration, a B in training and medical staff, which, by the way, in those three categories, best in the league.
Ooh.
And then you move to family treatment, and they're the only team with a B. There's a couple of B minuses in there. You see Hamilton with a B minus, but they win that category as well. So, like you said, you got to take it with a bit of a grain of salt, but at the same time, football ops, management, business administration, A minus for the Riders. They got as I mentioned, a B in medical staff. Equipment was a B, family treatment, a B, team travel, a B, training camp, a B. The only one that they, according to this, didn't do well in was nutrition and diet, which was a D plus. But in the three main categories that I think are the biggest, if you're going to keep track of these things, that would be football ops, medical staff and training staff, how you take care of your players and how you take care of their families. and they won in all three of those categories.
I feel like diet is on the player a lot of times, though. It's like it's not like you walk into the locker room and they got Petahe and Kubasa and all that. It's like, isn't that a you problem as a player? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Hey, they got Twinkies again for halftime. No, it's not how it works. I don't know. Whatever. We'll have to revisit that. I want to get into that a bit. It's people that have the answers to it. Let's look at Brent Monson. Has a new area code, as they say.
Well, yeah, that's taken Brent. Now, Brent was the defensive coordinator for a couple of years now in a row in Calgary. Calgary has already named their staff, full staff, top to bottom. I think they're the first team to do it. And Brent Monson goes back. Now, he went to McMaster. He's a graduate from McMaster in Hamilton, so he's kind of going back home. And I think what stands out for me when it comes to coaching staffs here is we're heading into the Christmas break here, the Christmas holiday. It's going to be very difficult to do much business for the teams in the next, 3 weeks. That takes you to the first week of January, which gives you maybe 3 weeks until free agency kicks in. And you and I both know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that there'll be communications happening before we get to the free agency date. Now, I don't know this to be official. I am not blowing the whistle on anybody, but we all know that player to player, coach with his buddy, and then that gets to a player. Those kind of communications happen. If you don't have your OC and your DC in place before Christmas, then you're going to be dragging into mid-January, and now you've only got 2 weeks. And those two guys, OC and DC, have got to be in place well before you get to the communicating of the players that you want to bring in to work into your system as an offensive or defensive coordinator. So to me right now, unless I've missed an announcement, and these things happen pretty quickly, but unless I missed one, every team has their OC, including a couple of head coaches that will do it, like Buck Pearson in Vancouver. But only the Bombers don't have an OC. And every team in the league has a DC. And that is going to put them behind when it comes to free agency and the communications prior to that. Very, very important. Every day matters because you're trying to build with free agency, you're trying to build, and your draft, a team that is going to fit into the systems that you want to run, especially if you have a young quarterback. It doesn't apply to the Riders, but if you have a young Trey Ford in Edmonton, you want to be working with your coordinator as quickly as you can. That's
a good point. I didn't even think it, because things are going to come here pretty quick before that February deadline. Have you heard anything on the schedule?
No, I haven't, but I've had a couple of questions that I sent to the league office and the football ops and Greg Dick at the league office that I haven't got a reply yet, which tells me that they're super busy. In fact, that's how I started my questions on my emails. I know you guys are really busy right now, probably getting the schedule together. But it's interesting that we're a few days ahead of it because, first of all, what would the Riders want to look at? What do we want to look at as a league? Well, you first of all, we got to see if there's going to be any neutral site games. I mean, I think that will be very cool to see if there's another game in Victoria on Vancouver Island, for instance.
That's why you called the office. That's why you called the office, because you want another game. Hey, this is Glenn. Can we get another game in Victoria, please?
Well, there was a couple of hints in, if you've got any inside info that you could just slide my way. I'm not necessarily an insider, but I always throw those into the questions that I send the league office. But, like neutral site games, and I know there's been some discussions about whether Saskatoon could do that. And so, and of course, Quebec City, I think that's going to be sort of where they start. And then we have to have, obviously, I believe we should have, I'm not sure your opinion on this, Barney, but the rematch of the Grey Cup should be in week 1 for sure. I think it's easy to build the stories there to kick off our season with, the rematch. Of course, the Labor Day rivalries have got to be back in there. But one thing that I'm really hoping in the schedule that hasn't been in it for the last couple of years is that every single team plays each other home and away. Like there should not be a season go by where Montreal doesn't travel to Saskatchewan or Toronto doesn't travel to Saskatchewan. That, that was kind of a COVID, watch your budgets travel thing that was going on 2-3 years ago, but that's long since passed. And now it's time to get back to at least home and away. Preference for me, I'm not sure about you, Barney, but preference for me would be in the division early and late. So you kick off the season with some real cool divisional matchups.
Bookend them with,
and then bookend them there. Yeah. And if you're going to get into some details, I know the league looks at trying to eliminate or get rid of, or at least minimize as many short weeks for player safety reasons. There's that you got to look at.
Yeah.
The business aspect. Every team wants a different day. I know Amar Doman in Vancouver, he really pushed for and got early kickoff times in the summer. So he was getting some 4:30, 5 o'clock kickoff times so that people could travel from Surrey and other places outside of Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, and get their kids back at home in bed. Yeah. And that was a huge success. I'm not sure the percentage of increase, but a big success. So there's a lot to go into the schedule that I know that they've got to be working hard to get out before Christmas, because it could be Christmas presents. The schedule, you can buy season tickets.
That's kind of what I was saying at the start. I'm surprised that it wasn't released even last week. We had Craig Reynolds on last Friday, and we talked, and he kind of gave us a little bit of a look behind the curtain, because fanatics, right? Fans, they're like, how come? And it's like, there is a lot of bouncing balls when you're putting together any kind of schedule, let alone like putting together a minor baseball schedule is difficult. Now you got professional teams, you got other teams in venues, you got holds for concerts in some venues. There's so much staffing. Then you look, and Omar Doman, he wants his earlier games. Maybe the Riders will want to do that next year a bit, during the times. I think the one thing that we talked about a lot last year, and it's probably, I think it'd be under the microscope more this year, is those short windows, for player safety, because there was a lot of complaining about that. The Riders didn't have it easy. They were flying all the way to the east on short weeks. And then it seems a team like, and I guess there probably wouldn't be a lot of competition there until college starts, but a team like Montreal, it seems like they want their Thursdays.
Yeah. And, so every team has slightly different requests there as far as which is their best day or best night for games. The Riders obviously love to have the chance for people to come from out of the city. Mm-hmm. So that's part of their deal, and I'm sorry, but I am not going to give the alibi to the league office that, there's too many balls in the air that they can't have something ready before Christmas. They can be working on this post Labor Day, start working on the next schedule well before the current season is over, because the teams in the league, unless we're looking at a 10th franchise that would change it all, then the teams in the league, where they are, the cities. You can't put it in final form until you get those requests coming in from each team, but each team should also be ahead of that game well before the end of the regular season. So I'm not going to give them an alibi on that. And, when it comes to the other one that I know we talk about a lot is those bye weeks and how they work. I would hope that if you have to have a short week and every team has to do that you're not traveling to the East if you're in the Western team. Yeah. That to me is another big one that they need to really take a hard look at. I'm not sure they have in the past. And then the final one to me is kind of when you get those bye weeks. And to me, this is a difficult one, Barney. What would you rather have? If you have it in week one, you have a strategic advantage because you've seen all the teams in real action for a week. So your pregame prep before your first game is got a bit of an edge on the other teams. You know, if you have it early and you, like, let's say you get off to a wobbly start, like you lose your first 2 games and it just doesn't look right, and you get one right there, that could sort of get you back on track. But then you'd want one midseason to rest. You'd want one near the end if you're in the playoffs and you want to rest some player. It's like that's a tough one when it comes to bye weeks to me. I don't know how you kind of can plan when they best used.
Maybe by the next time we talk in the new year, they'll have something out. But yeah, getting it before Christmas, like you said, for the presents would have been great. Okay, so we won't talk until we will talk on Thursday, right before Christmas. Then we're gonna run down all of our presents that we bought. Wouldn't that be something if it was released tomorrow?
Have you got your wife's present yet?
Yes, it's been affected by the mail though.
Oh,
a lot of husbands are going to use that as an out this year. Well, mail. Mail. Thursday, one more time, Glenn, before the holidays. Thanks, buddy.
Okay, thanks, Barney.
Yeah.